Gentleman, Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Point of personal privilege, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, we're down to 12 days left in this session. I think most of you know that probably the most important thing that we do is left, and that's the budget. And I had a friend tell me one time, which I thought was very appropriate, that look at your checkbook, and that will tell you sort of where your priorities are. And the budget is our checkbook. So to remind you of some of the very key things that are in that checkbook, we have really worked extremely hard to make sure that, for example, in higher ed, that we've given access and affordability. As a matter of fact, by my calculation, with the money we've put into that budget, hopefully we're going to see tuition increases in the 3% range. And that is a tremendous savings for our students. 1,700 new slots since 2011. We have funded, continuing that this year, for 4 of our biggest, most popular institutions, James Madison, Virginia Tech, UVA, and William & Mary. And I could go on and on and on again. VRS, the chairman made that a priority along with the vice chairman. We've basically fully funding for our state employees VRS at 100% in 2016 instead of 2019. And I can't tell you how many employees I talk to that goes, that's really sort of my lifeblood. And the solvency of that plan is absolutely crucial. Mental health. We can talk about PAC teams, which I think are a tremendous way to really help people that are struggling. Just do small things like make sure they're taking their medications. And drop-off centers, we all agree that's a tremendous thing that we need to do. So if you look at that laundry list of things, they are our core priorities. And let me be blunt, they're in danger. By injecting Medicaid expansion into our budget, and I'll repeatedly say this, it has nothing to do with the budget process. You're putting every one of those things in danger. The chairman said the other day we're about $40 million apart between the Senate and House budget. And I think realistically, and we'll do a little bit of fighting, but realistically, if you take Medicaid expansion out of the equation, that budget would be finished easily by Tuesday of next week. So here is the key. The key is that are we going to go down the path every year now of we have some great conservative philosophical idea next year, can't get it passed. We're going to stick it into the budget to make sure that you're hostage and you're going to be down here in April and May and June debating that. Is that the way we want to go? Because that's exactly the path that we're going on. And let me remind you, we set a process up last year after a very tough fight on Medicaid expansion, and that was the Merck process. And the Merck process was for the very reason of getting this out of the budget process. And one of the things we emphasize in that process, which I think everyone would agree on, is reforms first. You can't argue you've got a program that at the very least struggles. With a 1,600% increase over the last 30 years, it's 21% of all state budget, and we gloss over that figure. But boy, when you're up there trying to appropriate money, and you take 21% off the table to start with, it really limits what you can do. And so basically now we're down to almost a game of chicken. And it really does endanger our school teachers and higher ed, et cetera. Let's go to sort of who we're depending on in this whole debate, and that is Washington. We've heard a lot from the other side of the aisle of free money. We've heard, I think, from the gentleman from Enrico who's given us a nice lecture and a nice primer on what free money means, especially what debt means and how much debt we are in a day. What we have in this budget is real money. If you look at what the hospitals are getting, they get $118 million. But not only that, our free clinics and our whole safety net, which we think is very, very important. The Democrat proposal is central on the promise from the same people who promised, if you like your plan, you can keep it. Now, I want to remind you of something. In 2011, little known fact, the Obama administration, according to Kaiser Health News in September 2011, interjected basically both Medicare and Medicaid into this debate. As a matter of fact, it says in 2011 the Obama administration included $320 billion in cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. The plan specifically included $15 billion in cuts to Medicaid spending. The National Association of State Medical Directors opposed the cuts, with the executive director saying, quote, "It can only mean one thing, cost shifts to states who simply cannot shoulder any more burden," in this area. And of course, we've just seen the Medicare cuts that were announced recently at 2%. So let's play this out. I wish we could fast forward, we could read the end of the book, because I can guarantee you in 2022, you're not looking at a 90% match. Paul Ryan has told us that. So many people have told us that. You're probably looking at a 50 or 60% match. If you're at a 50% match, what you're looking at then is laying off 19,000 teachers, or laying off 13,000 sheriffs or sheriff's deputies, or basically defunding 214,000 in-state tuition slots. And that's just not physically prudent. But here's the real point of my speech today, the one thing I really want to hit, because now we have the attractive phrase, the private option. And that's a game changer. That's the one that, of course, is, and I find it fascinating. No one's saying Medicaid expansion anymore. That didn't work. So now we've gone to the private option. There's really no such thing. It's just Medicaid expansion. It's a myth. And let's be fair to the Obama administration. Philosophically, they would have crafted a plan that was a private option plan if that's where their heart was. I give them credit. That's not where their heart is. As a matter of fact, if you look at the CMS memos on Medicaid expansion, they say as follows: under all these arrangements, beneficiaries remain Medicaid beneficiaries and continue to be entitled to all benefits and cost-sharing protections. We talk a lot about waivers. They are temporary waivers. CMS memo. HHS will consider approving a limited number of premium assistant demonstrations, since the results would inform policy for the state innovation waivers that start in 2017. So frankly, even if you get the so-called temporary waiver, it's got to become a permanent waiver. There's not one state that can tell you that's applied for these waivers, they've been approved for a work search requirement. We hear so much about that. It's great to say we're going to throw the stuff into the waiver. At some point you've got to prove to us the states have actually got some of these things that you say they're going to get. Cost sharing at the level in the Senate plan hasn't been approved. And this automatic opt-out I keep hearing about, just simple. Just disenroll people. Now we know we're not going to do that. Speaking of heartless, it's just not going to happen. And number two, look at Arkansas. And this is a demonstration waiver. Basically what they were told is 7 months, everyone has the right of appeal, and basically they're funded till the appeal is adjudicated. And so think about this, when the temporary waiver goes away, you won't even get that. I guarantee you. This is not where the Obama administration's heart is. So let me conclude. We have an unworkable plan in the Senate budget that depends on the goodwill of Washington. It ignores the entire process that we set up to take this out of the budget. And this is the most important point. Because unfortunately, I hope I'm not saying this in April. It endangers our budget process, which is every priority this House believes in. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.